Good evening, everyone, and welcome to CanHammer, your source for 40K from the Great White North. This is Francois, once again your host, because Darren is a very unlucky man. And it's not a plumbing issue this time, but he has a migraine and cannot join us. Still, we have a great show for you tonight. Joining us, as usual, is my fantastic co-host, Nick. Nick, how's it going?
Good, thank you.
And special guest tonight, the man best known for misplacing his passport in a shoe. For co-hosting 40K Stats Center, and the most famous mustache in all of 40K, Val Ethelfinger is with us tonight. How's it going, Val?
It's going very well. I got to say, Francois, you're really nailing the disinterested intro to the show that was, mastered, created by Chris Haynes.
This is
you're proudly carrying that torch. That's
my
good.
Chris Haynes impression, indeed. Well, we're glad to have you with us tonight, Val. You're everywhere these days, so I'm sure most of our listeners know who Val Ethelfinger is. But our plan, well, I mean, maybe some of them must, but that is the plan tonight. We are going to talk about Val, about what drove you to be on all our screens and take this interest in 40K. Before we do that, though, our usual hobby roundup, because for some reason our listeners seem to like knowing what we're up to. We'll start with Val, since you're our guest. Are you doing any hobby projects these days?
Well, my hobby is become 40K media, so I'll plug the Kickstarter I've been pushing, which is Rightful Ruler. It's a AR app used for measuring stuff on your cell phone, which is really cool. But as someone who likes to hopefully one day again broadcast tournaments and events, I thought it would be really cool if we could have the AR stuff for doing streams. So basically they're doing a Kickstarter to bring the Rightful Ruler app to the PC so that we can run our cameras through Rightful Ruler, which would allow us to put sort of augmented reality overlays right onto the screen, which would give us some pretty next level technology to to show off the game and I don't know, make it a lot more visually interesting. It also opens up the ability to measure stuff remotely, which heck, even when you're over the table with a measuring tape, parallax is a thing, and it's even worse when you're trying to judge distance from cameras.
And then you get your measuring tape in there and start knocking terrain and models around.
Right. So I think there's a tremendous amount of applications having a way to do this. So I'm pretty excited about it. That being said, they're developers, and them developing this tool, which I think is useful for them. I think they get a lot out of it just having this technology demonstrated, hopefully on a lot of very popular Warhammer channels. So it's still time away from them improving their core product or developing something else. So I was able to get them to try a Kickstarter, see if they could raise what they thought they'd need. And their development costs, they estimate for, I think it's about a month and a half of development time, $8,000 US, which seems reasonable. I mean, that didn't sound like they were lining their pockets with that quote. So I was like, yeah, let's try for it. So I passed it around a bunch of content creators, and I think we're more than halfway now. So we've almost got there, which means we're really close to having a super cool tool. And this will be available to actually both of you guys. Do you guys stream occasionally?
Yeah.
So,
when we used to in the before time when we were allowed to.
There will be a day in the future where we will be able to once again, stand next to each other indoors.
Very soon. I got vaccinated yesterday, so I'm very hopeful.
Congratulations! Now. That's fantastic. I'm in a hot spot, so it's fun. It's kind of sexy. Oh, you live in a hot spot? Oh yeah. But in all seriousness, or actually less seriousness, it'll be available to not just content producers, anyone on an attribution license. So you won't have to pay. This is not going to, once the Kickstarter kicks off, it's literally like this is truly for the benefit of the community and also Rightful Ruler. But nonetheless, the community gets a really great tool out of it. And essentially you would add a credit. You just need to give credit to Rightful Ruler somewhere so that if someone's like, how the hell do I get this amazing technology, they know where to go.
No, I did check it out. I saw it go by on social media, and I checked it out, and it looks really, really great. And for game streaming, but also for like tournament shoutcasting and commentating, I think that would be a really fantastic tool to have.
I think in light of the zeitgeisty moment around player discipline and conduct that
I have no idea what you're talking about.
which Francois got us to wrap up in the pre-chat. He hosted,
didn't even want to. Yeah, exactly.
I've never been hosted in the pre-chat before, so that was impressive. Not even the great Paul Murphy has given me the wrap up in the pre-chat.
Well, listen, I put on my professor hat and I moved us along.
But so all I was trying to say is I can see a future where maybe a lineup, maybe your top 8 tables have a top-down camera over it, and you can have Neil Kerr in Sweden and Salty John in California and a whole other rainbow of crusty judges remotely adjudicating a game and making sure that everything is above board. Because with the ability to measure and the ability to hear what's going on, and rolling in a dice tray with maybe a camera on it, you're able to see everything you need to see to make sure things are being played properly. So I think it opens up really a lot of cool things, and that's my hobby right now, trying to get that Kickstarter off the ground.
That's really awesome. Really great.
Kickstarter.
I admit initially I wasn't like sold on the rightful ruler in terms of like using it in game, but the way you pitch it for more so the media, whatever surrounding and the streaming capacity for it, I think you're right. That's going to have the potential to bring it to the next level. So I'm on the Kickstarter right now. It's by the Minotaur Gaming or whatever.
Yep.
Minotaur. Okay. There you go. Pledged.
Amazing. Thank you. That is community in action right there.
There we go. Live pledge by Nick.
Well, because so I don't forget.
30 cents, but
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. I want all the accolades, but I don't want to actually have to give anything meaningful.
You gotta close them. You gotta close them when they're on the phone, right?
That's right.
I would say just about the app itself. The original version of it is it's finicky, to be honest with you, and so like I think the concept's amazing, and I'm just so grateful when people who have these like incredible technical skills for some reason decide that, you know what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this ability for Warhammer. And I think that's kind of the same thing I think of when I see like even like the filters for like Messenger or Snapchat, like the I'm not a cat guy, that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a hilarious application of like really complicated technology, and like that's what we use it for. So hey, if it's gonna be misused, it might as well be misused on Warhammer. And I'm so pleased that these guys are thinking it's a good idea to develop stuff for us, and BCP and the Battles app and countless other guys like Battle Scribe. Like there's this community of very skilled technical people who really have formed now the backbone of what we do and enable us to be a much more coordinated community. So hats off to you guys.
I remember writing lists by hand back in the 90s when I started playing, and I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore.
Oh yeah.
And running big tournaments with like literal spreadsheets, that'd be an endeavor.
Yeah. Well, that's actually how it evolved, right? Like it was basically, LVO was reaching critical mass, and they were like, this is getting impossible, and someone's like, well, I could just make an app, and then off they went, right? It's too cool. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I have no technical skills, but I am impressed by all those people who do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have almost no skills altogether.
Well, you're a half decent painter, Nick. So tell us what you've been working on.
You're a real Heffelfinger.
Yeah, I'm a real Heffelfinger here. I guess I've just been continuing to truck along on the Death Guard. Almost done another kind of set of 5 Death Shroud, and then once they're done, I'll probably kit bash a new Demon Prince, because I'm not a big fan of any of the Nurgle Demon Princes out there. I'm going to see if I can make something convincing out of the Castle and Robot kit. And after that, I got my Bellacore today in the mail.
One of the lucky few. That's a hot ticket.
Yes. The second an image of him came up on the internet, I messaged our guy, and I'm like, this must happen to me. I must have this. And I bugged him almost every week since. And so I was lucky to get it. I even offered, he's like, I don't know what the price is. And I was like, I'll send you money. I don't care. And
If you need to know how much Bellacore costs, you can't afford it.
yeah, that's right. Exactly. And
Seriously though, how sad is it that we're at a point now with supply issues that you have to pre-order your pre-order, otherwise you're not getting it.
well, I mean, you're not getting it now. Let's
Yeah.
let's
But I
not
want it now,
confuse this.
or no, or you're not getting it at all. Like I'm working on Cursed City right now. That's a whole other thing.
Look, yeah, everybody's like up in arms about that. They did the same thing for Indominus. Like, you got to get Indominus now. Nobody's ever going to get it. Like 6 months later, or whatever it was, 4 months later, when like there shouldn't have been a copy anywhere. You could scale the wasteland, not find anything. I emailed a couple of people, ended up with 3 copies. Like, so, I mean, it's not that scarce. I mean, Cursed City too. The second I made a joke online about it, I had people messaging me trying to sell me their Cursed City. So I was like, it's not that. Like, on top of that, whether it comes back or not, like, it'll probably come back. You can get your copy eventually, just like Bellacore.
For those of us who try to protect themselves from unnecessary anger, what is really the big deal? Because who gives a shit about Cursed City? Am I right about this?
Yeah, I know exactly.
That's the funny thing about it is that it's a specialist game, right? And it's, by all account, it's a great game. The minis are fantastic.
Yeah.
But you're buying this expensive box to play a Gloomhaven light game for a few hours, and I don't know how much replayability there is. You can technically use the minis in Age of Sigmar, but they're probably not going to work really well, and yet everyone wants it, and I, including myself here, I really wanted a box. Now, I wanted it to play with my son, who's turning 10. And the plan was for my son and I to play this campaign over the summer at the cottage, and in fact, he's like a real slave driver. He's like, Dad, you need to paint those minis. He's cracking the whip. Paint those Cursed City minis so we can
put those little hands to work, man. He's got those little fine fingers for detail. Just get him going.
You know, fine motor coordination, not really his thing, but he did assemble all 60 of the minis.
Oh, amazing.
I gave him a pair of clippers and I told him, follow the instructions. I'll paint once you're done. And I maybe should not have done that because it took him like 6 hours and he was done. And then he went, all right, now go paint.
I'll get back to work.
So I've now painted like 20 something of the Cursed City minis, making good progress. I'm keeping the heroes for last for a reward after slogging through the skeletons and rat swarms and all of that. But they are fantastic sculpts. Like, they're really, really good minis.
No, I get it. But like Val said, why do Warhammer 40K players give a shit?
Well, like, because we like being outraged, I think.
I think that's the bigger point of it.
We're bored. I think this community is again, everything's blurring together for me, but we're very active, right? Like we're like it is a hobby, like it's an active hobby. You do stuff, you go places, you make things. Like these are you are on thousands of podcasts because you're compulsive and stuff like that, and you can't say no to people. And you love listening to your own voice. These are things that we do, right? So when we're stuck indoors, as much as we all made the joke immediately when the pandemic started, like, I've been training my whole life for this. Maybe like some nerds, but like Warhammer nerds, I think we're getting angsty now.
Warhammer is a social hobby. You have to interact with people, and you have to have a social contract that you're going to have a good game. Like, you can't be an introvert and be a Warhammer player. By definition, if you play Warhammer, you interact with people. Are we getting after fake ITC points now? What's this?
No, they're very real. I mean, you're contract. That's right.
Are you? Was that a Tom Layton dig?
Huh?
Was that a Tom Layton dig? Because I think he's the one who says fake ITC points.
Oh no, that actually isn't a Tom Layton dig.
That's too bad.
That's just because Nick knows he'll never score highly enough on the ITC for it to matter, so he calls them fake points.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I take it as a personal offense that I'm not good enough to do any good at ITC.
I now, just because I've derailed us and already shamed the host for hosting, I probably behooves me to say I apologize for hijacking for the Cursed City thing, because I do find it perplexing. You were talking about Bellacore.
No, not at all. I'm glad you mentioned it, because everybody's talking about Cursed City, but you said exactly what I want to say. Like, who cares? Cursed City.
Well, I mean,
how many specialist games have you guys played before Cursed City?
So to be fair, I have the Silver Tower box right there on the shelf.
Yeah, box on the shelf.
I've painted half of it. And I've never played it.
Yeah. So
I bought that when it came out. I
case
painted half
and
the
points.
minis, and
yeah, exactly.
I never played it.
Yeah, I got Bellacore, and people will get Bellacore eventually. It may not be right now, but like along the same lines, there's people who are like, oh, I didn't get my chance to play Bellacore. It's like, man, you don't play demons.
Who are you to gatekeep Bellacore like that?
Honestly, I have half a mind to call Ben and tell him to ship me the 3 next Bellacores he gets.
Oh, damn. That's pulling rank.
That's right. But anyway, that's it. Bellacore. And then, yeah, I got the rest of the Space Wolves that I had ordered, complained over the last like 3 or 4 podcasts that Darren forced me to buy. And so now I have a Space Wolf army I have to put together and paint at some point. Pandemic's had that effect on me where I'm just kind of like hoarding armies in my office. So if you were to
it was different before the pandemic.
Well, I was hoarding chaos. Now I've like it started to bleed into other armies.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Again, getting squirrely.
Yeah, getting squirrely in here. Like I can't tilt my office kind of webcam without then exposing my dark side to my colleagues.
Like stand up too quickly and just a bunch of boxes fall onto the screen.
That's
Oh,
right.
jeez.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Look away.
That is a problem. There's half-assembled models all over my desk, and if I'm talking with students or teaching, I can't like pan the camera out too much. I got my history books behind me on the shelf, and then there's also an entire shelf of Warhammer books. No one's ever said anything, but I've got an entire shelf of Warhammer books behind me when I teach.
That's fantastic.
Oh dear. Yeah, it's weird times we live in, but at least we have technology to keep us entertained and to keep chatting Warhammer. These little chats that we have on the podcast every couple of weeks are actually really good for my sanity, and hopefully the people listening are also enjoying. Frankly, I do it even if no one was listening because it's fun. But it gives us the excuse to talk to people and invite guests like Val. And one of the things I wanted us to do tonight is to get to who is Val Ethelfinger. Because you've been kind of everywhere, but Val is also a nom de plume, a character, a persona.
Indeed.
I've actually never met the real you, because the first time I met you, I met Val Ethelfinger at CCBB a few years back. You were doing you were walking from table to table, like commentating, I think, back then.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we had a short chat on camera that I put on YouTube and nobody watched. And since then, I keep seeing you on podcasts and everywhere. And I'm curious to know, how did Val get into Warhammer? And then how did the persona of Val Ethelfinger, because that's not your real name, came to be?
Well, so the Val Heffelfinger bit is a nom de plume, and I like that. We can say that on this podcast. That's fantastic. I often will use alias, fake name, for our southern friends, but nom de plume is just so much nicer. And that's because people used to use a quill pen, right? Yeah, that's right.
Correct.
For writers, often women. Oh, that's nice. All right, so that came around. Honestly, just a little Google defense. I would think usually at tournaments, before I podcasted, I would often be like, they'd be like, "Are you Val?" I'm like, "Yeah," but I just do that for shame reasons. I'm Simon, and I would always introduce myself as Simon. Valfred, Valfred, is my middle name. It was my grandfather's name. And Heffelfinger is what I've always thought to be the most hilarious surname and most obviously fake name that I think exists in language. And Pudge Heffelfinger was the first professional football player, or so the story goes. So that's where that all comes from. It's really just to give myself some Google defense, because professionally, if I use my real name, it's pretty unique. And I would just, if you Googled me, you would only get 1 million articles and podcasts about Warhammer. And I always kind of want to separate those things. That being said, as like life has gone on, and my quote unquote real friends are actually my Warhammer friends now. Like my former real friends, I barely talk to. So like it is weird that I will sometimes be like, like, call me Simon, and they'll be like, anyway,
no.
Val. So whatever.
Okay, Val.
Okay,
sure.
Val.
Yeah, let's just make shit up.
So I don't want to, when you have genuine friendships and contacts and all that kind of stuff, and it is a bit weird. So I try and make sure it's known that it's not because it's not really because of anything at this point. It's also funny to me. I think it's a funny name. I really thought it would be obviously fake.
And now you've just offended someone whose last name really is Heffelfinger.
Yeah, somebody the real Val Heffelfinger out there is just like crying his eyes out.
There's a Sal Vettelfinger or something like that.
I saw that. I thought that was a spoof on your name.
It is.
Of course.
It's a person on Instagram who used a fake version of my fake name. I was like, that's some meta shit, man.
That's how you know you made it.
It's amazing.
It's like your evil Warhammer twin.
Yeah, actually, he's a JAG. He's like a military lawyer in the United States, and I met him at LVO. He's a great guy. Really enjoyed meeting him. So what was I talking about? I don't know. I keep losing my train of thought because.
Well, let's backtrack a little. Tell us how you got into Warhammer media, because that's like not something that people stumble into, except I guess maybe I did because Darren was like, come on my show. But how did you start a podcast?
Starting a podcast was really far down the road because I never thought that I would commit to it, and I was scared because like CanHammer, for example, has been going forever, and there were all these like really staunch podcasts that I listened to that, you know, we're pretty proud of the fact that they've been going forever. And, you know, there's a billion podcasts that come and go that get to like 4 episodes and then they tap out. And I was like, that's exactly what my podcast would be. So I didn't want to do it. I think my first show was a local Toronto show called Inches and Cubes. And they were guys who were part of the Hogtown Gaming Club here. And Hogtown is radically casual, militantly casual. Especially in those days. I think it was still 7th edition, probably, or maybe the end of it. And I don't know, it was one of those things where they would kind of rag on competitive players and competitive 40K in general. And I just felt like they didn't really know what they were talking about. And that was probably one of the biggest issues.
There's a lot of misconceptions about competitive 40K, I find.
Oh, yeah, big time. And also it's funny because I would see and hear like the types of lists they were describing, and they weren't narratively driven. Like, they didn't name their dudes. They were bringing pretty heavy shit all the time. Like, yeah, okay, maybe they didn't mix factions as much, but it wasn't like they were running like a plasma cannon, a heavy bolter, and a las cannon, all their dev squads. You know, like it was somewhat optimized. So, you know, so I felt like maybe they just didn't really understand it. Actually, it wound up happening. I started reaching out. I was like, look, guys, I argue with you all the time while I'm walking my dog. Would you have me on to just be the other side of this conversation, because I feel like you're just beating up on the jocks too much. And they were really awesome. They're like, yeah, absolutely. And so I got to come hang out and wrote up a bunch of show notes, and we had a really great conversation about you know, the different tournaments that were around at the time and structure, and kind of how I talked a little philosophically about how I did find it funny that the competitive crowd, you know, the jocks are the outcasts of Warhammer, and the cool kids are the more you know, aesthetically minded ones. So that's always been a funny dichotomy to me. But I also wanted to like really emphasize, especially then in 7th edition, that, I mean, you've already mentioned. Is it Descartes who did the social contract? Who wrote the social contract? I can't remember
now. It's too late for that.
I think it's Descartes.
And anyway, I won't Google it because my keyboard is loud and people complain when I type.
Fair enough. You know, all that social contract stuff. Well, in 7th edition, you needed a real detailed prenup before you could put models on the table without offending someone's principles. So my thing was always like, tournaments are way easier to like get along at and not be bummed out about what happened, because everyone knows what the score is. Everyone knows what they're trying to do. Everyone is playing with the same assumptions coming into it. It's much easier, even now, it's much easier to play at a tournament than it is to capture everyone's very specific aesthetic ideal of what a game should look like and how it should unfold and what is an appropriate army to field in that particular situation.
And I would bet that more people have bad experiences at pickup games at gaming stores than do at tournaments.
That's an excellent point, actually, that I always fought with too, when you get these, I don't know, people that are like more casual or narrative driven, and they seem to have these preconceptions about competitive gamers, and they seem to vilify that practice. But like you said, like, I go to a tournament, or when people argue they don't want to go to tournaments, like, I go to a tournament, I know exactly what to expect. People are bringing the absolute most optimize lists they can, and they're trying to win.
Yeah.
And let's not conflate that with the win at all cost label that people throw around. They're trying to win, but 90% of the games I've played, it's in a gentleman, whatever fashion, right? And you're doing the same. So like you said, the expectations are very, it's very concrete and it's set, versus the pickup game. You show up with your list and buddy, for some reason, has this super fluffy, unoptimized list. And then there's like these feel bads around it, or vice versa, or so.
Yeah, exactly. And
you set those casual players straight on that podcast.
So, well, another argument I love to make, and that was actually one of the things I made on that show, I'm pretty sure, which is there's no such thing as a casual Warhammer player. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like, what? Like, what is casual about Warhammer? Like, there is, to get a game going, like to do the game as it's intended, on a painted board with terrain and all the models and stuff. How many hours of work is it? Like, if you don't know anybody, if you're just like, you know what, guys, today I'm going to start Warhammer. Like, this is 1,000 hours until you can actually do something. Like,
it's $1,000.
Yeah,
more. Like, come on, $1,000. Yeah, maybe get a little taste. Like it's just to whet your appetite, right? So, like, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That the Warhammer can be casual, and especially when these guys are the ones who are engaging in flame wars and getting really upset about the color of Gilliman's underwear. Like, that's, if you have specific opinions that you're using caps lock to defend, you're not casual about it. Like, calm yourself. So, like,
Cosmo's losing it.
It's because the stigma of competitive 40K is that we're too serious. You're taking it's just toy soldiers. You're too serious. Don't take it so seriously. It's like, we take the shit so serious. Our lives revolve around this thing. This isn't a hobby. It's a lifestyle. Like, it's crazy.
I mean, I think we were talking last week about this. You'd mentioned this a little bit, and I'm like you hit the nail right on the head, right? It's because, like, I work, reasonably professional dude. But in the background, there's like 20 different chats going on of 20 different groups of friends that are talking about, these guys are talking about Drukhari. You and I are talking about like tournaments and whatever ITC culture. I'm talking blah, blah, blah. I'm in my office where there's probably a down payment's worth of Warhammer in.
Right. Yeah.
And I've spent thousands of hours painting it all together, notwithstanding the travel costs.
Yes.
Where we're talking about, I'm going to casually go to LVO and spend $3,000 in Vegas to play toy soldiers. Yeah.
Not casual. Not casual.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it's that was kind of my jump off point. And I guess I posted the fact that they were kind enough to have me. I actually went on to do a couple more shows with them. The worst ever review of, I think, of any sort of codex was my review of the 8th edition Grey Knights Codex, which I gave an endorsement for, as well as the Elysians when they were released in Forge World. So some bad content there if you want. That was back before I realized some people knew what they were talking about, which I did not. And then after that show, Pablo heard, I guess for some reason he clicked on it because we were friends on Facebook, and he clicked on it and listened to it. He's like, I really liked what you guys were saying there, and I need a guest this week. Would you like to have that conversation again on this show? And I was like, absolutely. And we used literally the show notes I used for Inches and Cubes on chapter tactics, and that was my first foray into chapter tactics. And that was right around when it was, he was picking up a little steam and he wanted to bring on more variety on the show. And I got to be one of the first 3 co-hosts. It was me, Jeff Robinson, and Sean Abuse Puppy Morgan.
Yeah.
And to be like, then I posted a lot on Facebook. I guess I was pretty visible at some tournaments, but like, I wasn't Jeff Robinson or Sean Abuse Puppy Morgan. Like, I mean, even Sean, like, wrote half of the Frontline Gaming blog for a long period of time. Like, it was prolific dude. So it was really cool, and that I even got to be involved in those chats and on that show. And from there, I just started inviting myself on all kinds of other shows.
And then you started the Stat Center with Peter.
Yeah. So that came about from chapter tactics, really, because I guess in the beginning of 2019, it was going 18 going into 19. It's all time is a flat circle.
Yeah.
So around there, I like everyone was pestering, and by everyone I mean fair amount of people were like, "Hey BCP, can you hook me up with the data so I can do some number crunching?" And no one was getting the data from BCP. Old Val Ethelfinger rolls up, "Hey, could I get the data?" And I'm like, "Yep." So, I don't know why. They gave me all of the tournament results from that year. So it was the year seventh transitioned into eighth, and so I was able to do like faction analysis, like what were the most popular factions. Literally, we didn't know. This is something we take for granted right now. We know what people play,
and it's pretty crazy that it's that recent. It's just like 3 years ago.
3 years ago, right? It was, and this is like the most basic bitch analysis, right? Like I know how to put stuff into an Excel spreadsheet and make a pivot table, which to a really lay person is wizardry. Is like I also know how to do a lot of keyboard commands. So if I'm in a meeting, like people like just sometimes will be in stunned silence because I don't touch the mouse. I'm that kind of guy. It doesn't mean I actually know much. So I'm able to do from that. I'm able to pull some things out. And one of the morals of that article was, unfortunately, in order to actually get real good actionable data, aside from, hey, isn't that neat data, we'd need someone insane enough to, really grind through all of this and, clean it all up. But that ain't
meanwhile, in the great white north of Canada, one lone person sitting in a radio tower.
And I tell the story, and I don't know, I can't remember anymore if he did hear that call or if he was also in parallel being like, why don't we know this? And essentially Peter the Falcon Colosimo of 40kstats.com.
I heard it was the Emperor's avatar that spoke to him, Revelation, actually.
You just saw a burning figure on the runway.
That's right. Pointed at him. It said data. And he's like, what?
It was actually an Imperial Eagle, but he mistook it for a falcon.
Yeah. Yeah, in the sky. And he's like, I'm in northern Alberta, dead of winter. It's -50 outside. Where is that eagle coming from?
Well, there's just something poetic about a guy who's an air traffic controller in a place with no air traffic. It's just a beautiful thing. So anyway, so Pete, either as a result of my throwing it in the universe or just receiving it from an image of the Emperor himself, starts crunching numbers, and he starts, I think, with BAO of that year, and he sends it to Pablo. And Pablo, he's a fairly notable podcast personality, so he gets a lot of not crank stuff, but a lot of people throw stuff his way and be like, hey, I want to do this. And he's like, cool. And then they never hears from him again, and he never really looks at the email. And so it's the summertime, and now Pete has done more tournaments, and he has more data. And Pablo shares it with our chat. And I'm like, this guy's counting like every single thing that's happening at every Warhammer tournament. That's pretty good. Why don't we talk to this guy?
Yeah.
And we brought him on Chapter Tactics, and I thought he was adorable and nervous, like, because he was clearly a bit nervous. Probably, I don't know if Jeff was on that, because Pete was a big Jeff Robinson fan from StarCraft days. But anyway, I thought it was awesome, and I thought he was hilarious. And after that show, I was like, look, guys, we got to like get him on the show, because someone's gonna scoop him up, feed him soup and make him do their stats for him.
Yeah.
We need to do that. So Pablo's like, yeah, obviously. I was already, so they added him to the show, and he was on the show. And because Peter is so insane and committed to his work, I've started feeling more comfortable with the concept of me doing a show, because I know that if I didn't commit hard enough, that he would make me feel really bad. And so that's an important relationship to have, which is disappointment.
Guilt, disappointment. It's fundamentals of any relationship, really. Marriage, in fact.
And so I pitched Stat Center, and also I thought that in all seriousness, on that show and various talking head shows, I didn't have a lot to add, because it was now, we were also in the era of the brown magic. So like we were in the era now of like actual technically sound players sharing their thoughts publicly, rather than everyone has a valid opinion. And I was rapidly realizing, like, I don't have a valid, I can talk this sort of higher level stuff, and I draw interesting connections, I guess, sometimes, but like, you guys were like, let's talk to Kari later. I'm like, cool. All right, sure. They're the purple ones.
Yeah, I'm
So
the
like,
same.
so I felt like I would be better suited hosting a very intelligent person, and also I like to think that I have some funny ideas sometimes. So I thought it was a good dynamic, and no one was doing just news. Like there's another thing that had changed is now there were enough events that were happening, and then on top of that, now we have Peter's data, so we know stuff about them. And on the whole competitive players are evil thing, I thought it was important to be able to get these people actually in a place where you could hear their voices and you'd know that they're like they're like people who like Warhammer. They're not monsters who want to suck your blood at night. And I thought normalizing competitive 40K was an important project, and that's where Stat Center came from, and it was really fun while it was going.
Yeah, and I myself, I think I listened to every single episode. I really enjoy that show. I'm
Right
a big
on.
fan of what you guys did. It appealed, I think, to my, I don't know, the rational part of my brain where I wanted to know things that we could actually know, and not
It has
just
a
go
lot
by
of appeal.
gut feeling. And actually, are there plans for 40K Stat Center to return once tournaments resume?
I think I'm really touched by how much people seem to be interested to see it come back. So because we haven't touched on it, but I've now sort of entered in with Frontline Gaming. I'm in bed with them.
That's official as of today.
Official as of today,
Fresh
creative
off the
director,
press.
which is the title I picked, by the way. And
What
did
does
I
a
take
creative
seriously?
director do?
Exactly. It's
He
fantastic.
creates, Francois, obviously.
Create and I
He
direct.
directs the creation.
That's
okay?
right.
It
God.
does sound fantastic.
People are impressed. I am like, damn, nailed it. Like,
Yeah.
wow. I'm gonna
It
be
sounds important anyway.
The
I'm gonna
Mike Brandt of FLG.
that right? Come on, maybe he should be the creative director of something. Like, get
Yeah,
it
exactly.
going, Mike. Come on.
That's right.
So yeah, I've just so far I feel like I can retire just coming up with that job description. It's fantastic. But I think
That'll be tomorrow's post, your retirement.
so. I've done everything I set out to do. I created an amazing title, and I'm now going back to just guest hosting and talking about myself on shows. So yeah, I think I'm a huge Frontline Gaming fanboy. I have to, like, full disclosure, say that I have always, like, by always I mean since I got into Warhammer, I would listen to Signals, and they were the guys who were like genuinely excited during 7th edition somehow, which was rare.
In the dark days.
Like, I don't know if you guys remember Logan on this show. That one was hard. Like, I had to like talk to my therapist after listening to CanHammer. Like, the sadness was so deep and the bitterness was upset. Like, it was so serious. Like, the guy denied that it was possible that Warhammer community was actually Games Workshop. He was like, it's a fake website. Like, I was like, what? How?
It's funny you mentioned you're the second person in the last couple of months to mention Logan and how salty he was. Danny McDevitt mentioned him on Mob Rules, independent. Like, I've never met Danny. I've never spoken to Danny. I don't know his interactions with the CanHammer crew. I don't think it's very much recently.
Yeah.
He mentioned it. And now you're mentioning Logan again. So that's pretty funny. It goes to show you that it was.
Oh, he was next level. So, and the thing that's great about Logan is, like, you meet Logan, he's a wonderful guy. I mean, he still goes out and helps organize Capital
He was
City
the coach
Bloodbath.
for my team, the last CanHammer team tournament. He hasn't played Warhammer in like
Years.
Yeah. But he came out, drank, he coached the team, and we had a great time. Yeah.
It was wonderful. But anyway, and also the thing is, although I pick on him, he wasn't alone. Like, I mean, there was a lot of like Stockholm syndrome going on. People were they just love to hate the game, and a lot of the podcasts had devolved into very, very salty things. Even Long War was particularly salty, and there's just a lot of shows that weren't really all that happy about things. And I listen to all of them. I listen to every minute of content I could get my hands on, because I don't know why. I just really like listening to podcasts. So oh crap, lost it again. Help me.
You were talking about the creative director at Frontline.
Creative director, podcast.
I don't know how we ended up to 7th edition. But...
Why? Logan. I don't know. Anyway, creative director. I was rambling all of that because I really like Frontline Gaming, because they were the ones who made me really like tournaments.
They were still positive.
There we go. Jeez Louise.
We've talked a little bit about this, and I can be critical of just about anybody. I don't always agree with kind of FLG, but I do credit, I think, FLG with basically in part saving competitive Warhammer.
Yeah. Are they Warhammer heroes? They're not, are they? I don't think they are. That's bullshit.
I
Anyway.
honestly think they're the reason why, at least if not the only, but a huge part of why we have the competitive 40K culture, tournament scene, and all that today.
Certainly the version that we have today, yes, they have a lot to deal with. But I mean, I don't want to overstate the fact that there are also a lot of people who did a lot of really great things to keep this thing going. And yeah, they were two of them, but they were very visible, and they were just, I don't know, they were super positive. And I went to the LVO; it was amazing. They had a great impact on my life, and I thought they were pretty reasonable guys. So
Yeah.
I'm a Frontline Gaming fanboy as a result. And so when I wanted to do Stat Center, that was where I wanted to put the show, because I feel like, these guys are a really important pillar of the competitive community. People should go to Frontline Gaming to listen to stuff about, events in the tournament scene. I think that if someone's going else, I'm offended. If someone's going somewhere else, I think that's why are you doing that? So that's why we put Stat Center up there. And I don't know, we had middling success. It was a great show. It was great fun. But I think with the creative director thing, aside from it being just an amazing title, is to try and put some more structure and strategy around their lineup of podcasts. And so see what we can do to find, creators who, we can help with resources or some sort of mutually beneficial arrangement. Probably not cash. In fact, I can say definitely not cash. But there's stuff that, because Frontline Gaming is a full-time business, and obviously having podcasts that say the word Frontline Gaming repeatedly is useful to that business. There's definitely some mutual benefit that can be made there. So we can hopefully, using that, we can grow that platform and give good creators a nice way to make podcasting or creating their show or whatever it might be a little bit easier to everyone's game. I think ideally it's not a cynical venture. It is an attempt to get, I guess, more reach for Frontline Gaming and more reach for the people who create content for them. So that's what I'm excited to try to do.
It's the product speaks for themselves. That Frontline Gaming had Stat Center. They have Game Changers now. They have 40K Today. For a while, the Art of War crew was there. They have Chapter Tactics. And Signals from the Frontline is just kind of one of those I listen to all the time too. And it's a great crew, and I'm excited what you do with it. Hopefully something like Stat Center, because like Francois,
100%.
I'm a nerd by trade. I analyze data and lots and lots of it. And so I like hearing about it in terms of how it affects our games, how it can affect my approach to the game tournament-wise, and whatever else. And it's just kind of a general source of information for, like you said, the very casual thing we participate in.
Right. All the people spend 5 hours a week listening to shows casually.
Yeah, exactly.
I probably consume like 20 hours of Warhammer content a week. Some of it in the background, like as I paint. I'm not always actively engaged.
Because you want to you got to do your subliminal reps too. You got to make sure that
there are probably days where, from when I wake up to I go to bed, there's Warhammer in the background, or I'm thinking about Warhammer, or I'm reading it, or I'm painting it, or I'm playing it. Like
the grossest one is like waking up before I've said anything to my wife, responding to a Warhammer related message on my phone. It's like, are you my girlfriend? Like,
yeah, exactly.
like, is this cheating? The amount of, I was kind of pulling up Pocket Casts here to see if I don't even want to look at the stats, because it will tell you your, how many hours you've listened to. 156 days and 9 hours since April of 2016.
Okay.
That's a lot. Although, because I listened to it a little bit sped up, I have saved 8 days.
And there you go.
8 days of awkward silence has been removed thanks to our friends at the Pocket Casts app.
Well, to be fair, I think the three of us, because we go out of our way to be on podcasts and talk Warhammer for free, like we're not really making money out of this. We have a very small Patreon, but we're not making money really. We're probably not like your average Warhammer nerd, but going by the number of people who watch battle reports and who pay for content from Tabletop Tactics or Titans or whatever, there's definitely a huge amount of demand for that, and there's space to grow. For sure.
Yeah, and there's like I'd call it like the third wave that seems to be coming right now, because there would have been the originals, you know, your CanHammers. I would count that this venerable institution.
Which is funny because
venerable, like fossils,
is
essentially.
CanHammer still CanHammer if 200 plus episodes later none of the original crew are on anymore?
Sure, that's the dream, man. Like 40K Radio in some weird zombie form continues to go forward. It exists. People, I assume, listen to it. Maybe only the casual. Maybe the people who
they listen to it like they listen to CanHammer. Right?
To be fair, we managed to lure Chris back in every once in a while, so he's not totally gone.
Yeah, like there's as I was. What was it? Oh yeah,
third wave.
I got it. You know, there's the CanHammers and Signals, kind of TFG radio. They go pretty far back, but probably not even that far back. Independent characters though definitely goes super deep.
Mm-hmm.
So there's these guys. Paul Murphy would kill me if I didn't say Forge the Narrative. Those were kind of more the vanguard shows. And then when I started getting into it, I think there's like a demographic bubble. I think that's definitely happening. So like a bunch of people turned 30, had some spare time and some spare income, and were like, you know what? I'm going to activate this Warhammer thing that I used to do. And because that story is so common that
that's my story.
100%. That's my, exactly.
You know, it's a super normal way of
like you
people
play
just
when
wake
you're like
up.
12 or 13, and then you start university and you get interested in different things.
Yeah,
and
MK Ultra was a Games Workshop conspiracy, and we're all Manchurian candidates. You know, programmed to paint miniatures for some reason. So so anyway, around then, that's when I think because when I first started listening, everyone on there was complaining that everyone and their dog had a podcast. Little did they know,
wow,
that everyone and their dog's dog friend would have their podcast very soon.
Buckle up. Yeah, exactly.
You don't know what podcasting is if you think that was a lot of podcasting. And now what I was trying to get to is, it seems to me that, you know, like nerd culture, I think this is a popular meme, is supposedly less nerdy now. It's kind of it's popular. You have your is it Stranger Things, you know, the normalizing of D&D.
Yeah.
Yeah, your Game of Thrones being the zeitgeist for a little while there, though they screwed it up at the end, so maybe it's not cool anymore. Dragons are out. You know, so like geekery in general is much more acceptable, and I think that's also millennials becoming the dominant culture probably has something to do with that. But I've noticed that during the pandemic, it seems like even amongst the geekiest among us, you know, the alpha nerds, the ones who are loud and proud, they were still too ashamed to admit that they like Warhammer until very recently. And now they are starting to come out. And so there's this third wave of like legitimate, and by legitimate, I mean like people who have significant audiences on Twitch and YouTube pivoting into creating Warhammer content.
Well, look at Magikarp Use Fly. Like, he's one of them, right?
Yeah.
He started a whole new channel. He's got a whole crew working on that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's pretty decent content, actually. It's really been growing for them recently, and it's pretty good.
Pleasant Kenobi is one I enjoy. Although I don't know if coming from Magic to Warhammer is, maybe that's just nerddom to nerddom. But
Magic was on ESPN, man. I think that they were over the hill already.
You're right.
Like, you know, Bricky, who's a member of the Magikarp Use Fly crew, he's got a decent channel. He did 2 episodes of like every faction in 40K. And I think in 6 months, the second episode I saw there, I think was at 1.7 million views.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the top end estimates of how many like active customers there are is in the couple million range. So like so we now have people creating content who have total reach that is as much as what we figure to be around what the amount of players there are is, right? So that to me is really priming things for you know, potential growth. And there's also a lot of stuff that's been going on around it, which is Games Workshop kind of opening up their IP. Mm-hmm. So even if you scroll past the really bad cell phone game on your app, you will be exposed to the Games Workshop logo. You will see the Aquila. You know, you will understand that there's a weird space guy in a suit with a gun and he might be a monk. You know, like there's like it's sort of,
it's part of the plan. Like they picked up Astartes, right? And that's being viewed by like people outside of the Warhammer kind of world, right?
Astartes got really picked up as a, you know, sort of watch and react type vid. It was really, really popular. So a lot of these like Marvel they ran out of Marvel movies, right? So like a lot of those guys were pivoting to other content, and so there was a lot of like watch and reacts to. They used to do Marvel trailers, but Astartes was a big one.
It is really starting to bleed outside of what you would consider the normal Warhammer crowd. Like, because I remember in the brief time I flirted with the Canadian military, I was in infantry training, and it's like the half hour at night you get to yourself outside of being just abused nonstop.
Okay.
And I go to see a buddy, and he was like he's your typical like image of what muscular kind of athlete special forces type guy looks like, right? The person you would think has no interest in this stuff. And what is he doing on his little bunk? He's reading a Horus Heresy novel.
Nice. Yeah.
And I was like, yo, you enjoy that? I was like, man, I can't get enough of these. So the next time I went home, I grabbed all of them, brought them to him, and he literally over the 3-month course read them all.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is really starting to.
I haven't read them all. That's really dedication. There's a lot of them.
All the ones I gave him.
Okay.
Every Horus Heresy novel. Like, we didn't have that much time to read on course.
I was gonna say there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's the IP that Games Workshop's sitting on, and was sitting on, and is now actually getting out there and making good use of, is deeper than probably any other fictional universe that exists. I think. I mean, I'm not like if there's something that has more detail and breadth to it, and has been written about more, and has just more definitions, and has outlined everything as 40K. It's like the Star Wars extended universe, probably by a couple orders of magnitude.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at how popular Star Wars has been, despite all of it tripping over itself across a bunch of trilogies, like, where could Warhammer go? Because obviously people watch this stuff. I mean, it's not a huge departure to read the Horus Heresy and look at Star Wars and be like,
Well,
these aren't.
What do you think, Val? What is the future of Warhammer media? Do you have thoughts on that?
As creative director of Frontline Gaming.
And so that's, I think, kind of a. I'm the creative director of Frontline Gaming.
Frontline Gaming.
We've been doing a lot of focus groups and studies of existing podcasts. I think, look, everything, and this is another one of the things I love to rant about, is that everything about Warhammer is insane. So, and I think this is actually just a general meme too, is like everything about Warhammer is insane. Like the story itself is really amped up. All the details of it are over the top. But like, the game of Warhammer, we talked about nothing being casual about it, but on top of that, like, the idea that 1,000 people would show up with all of their stuff and have flown there to Vegas or whatever to play this, and that someone was willing to make 500 tables worth of terrain and organize that, and it's insane. Like, if you had drawn it up and said, okay, here's the game plan, guys, we're gonna do this, and this is gonna happen. We're gonna make this happen this year. It's dumb. Like, why would that's not gonna work. That won't happen. Even Games Workshop itself is a brick and mortar retailer, a book publisher, in the 21st century. In fact,
shockingly behind technologically.
Deep into the we're 2021 here, guys, and they are still rolling on 1990s business models, and they don't give any Fs. So, like, I will not put any restrictions on how far this could go, and I think there's no. So I should rephrase that. There's no reason I should doubt that this couldn't break out into popular culture in some form or some piece of it, because that's the other thing, is massive. So what's the thing that captures the imagination? Maybe it's Tyranids or some random little detail, and
if that Eisenhorn TV series that's supposedly in development, if it's good and people start watching it, like, all of a sudden it could really blow up, because that's a gateway drug to
if you get a HBO quality Warhammer TV show, like, game over. It's
one would think it's very atmospheric. I mean, they got to figure out how to have women involved in the story. I think you could probably do it.
And despite some content creators, diversity,
diversity would be good. But I think it'd be very easy to, present the 40K universe without seeming like you're trying really hard, in a much more diverse way.
We live in Canada. You walk in downtown Toronto, you're not working hard to see a diverse culture. Like, it doesn't. Why is that so shocking for some people in Warhammer? It's beyond me.
Well, also, here's another thing: is that when you look at a lot of the popular YouTubers, again, they look like us. Like, and by us, I mean society in general. So now that these people are pivoting towards Warhammer content, there are women on all these channels. There are people of color on all of these channels.
Yeah.
They are diverse. They look like a Games Workshop Warhammer brochure, which up until now, that was the only place I saw a crowd that looked like that playing Warhammer. So that's cool to me, because now, as much as, trolls on the internet make a big bugaboo out of representation, it does matter in drawing other people in. Like, I can think of activities that if I walked by and looked in and saw who was up, what they were up to, I don't know that I'm walking into a mahjong parlor and slapping down some tiles. Like, that doesn't look like that's for me, right? Like, I'm going to keep going.
LVO 2022, we are going to find a mahjong parlor and we're slapping down some tiles.
Just slap down some tiles.
Yeah,
and that's just, I don't know, that's just sort of human behavior. So if you can have, and I think there's something really genuine and awesome about the Warhammer community, in that we are quite evangelical about it, in the sense that, yes, we realize this is a strange thing to do with your time. And it is very silly, but also it is so awesome. And you should probably have a look at this, because it's really cool. Would you like to try? Hey, I can loan you some models. You know what? I know a guy selling an army. It just goes. So we are quite inclusive. And I think when people do find their way, into our midst, especially, I think, in the competitive scene, I think it is quite welcoming. In the parts I've been, maybe I'm in a bubble. It's possible. But anyway, so that third wave is, I think, much more representative of society in general. It's got much bigger audiences. And I think there are content creators also that are taking some risks. If your job is YouTube and you're pivoting into tabletop, you're going on a leap of faith. So I also credit those guys with now being like, what, this is not only something I think is worth doing, because it's their job, but it's also something they like so much that they want to take that risk. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and on that note, I was listening to Tabletop Tactics today. The B-Bone is leaving, and so they're hiring someone, and they had like a 2-minute video this morning, apply to work with us. And then, just out of curiosity, obviously I'm not moving to Bath, England.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure my wife would be upset about that, but I clicked on the link just out of curiosity, and the application process for who they're going to hire is really impressive and professional, and I bet they get dozens of applicants.
Well, there's a lot of salaries and livelihoods on the line, so you're not going to just have some Joe Blow. They're not going to hire Nick Blackburn out of once in a while CanHammer fame, to be on there and like.
Once in a while, CanHammer. Once in a while, Nick Black. Yeah. Yes, but I mean, so here's another thing. So I was just sort of talking about that third wave. If you want to talk about a example of, and actually Canada has a good example of this too, Mini Wargamer, people who have built business models around making Warhammer content. Yeah, Mini Wargaming, obviously they were perhaps the OGs of that, and then Tabletop Tactics came along, and I think consciously attempted to sort of perfect some of the things that Mini Wargaming were doing. And but they also come from Lawrence and B-Bone anyway met at drama school, and they, Lawrence has always come at it with a very professional mindset. And I think by that, in the arts as well, making sure people are paid properly has been a big principle of his. So if you've been watching the channel a while, they've leveled up, but they've leveled up very deliberately and slowly as they are able to scale up. And
I started watching them in the kitchen when he was still playing on his kitchen table.
Yeah,
the step from there to now is massive. But you're right, it was a bunch of very small steps.
But I knew immediately when I saw that, like the kitchen table videos, I immediately knew like there was something different about him, because he was the first one to add the rain effect.
Charisma, and that's what was different.
Yeah, well, that. But I just remember when he was like, he would pan the models table level. Like, so you saw them like they were in their little holes with their guns and there was rain, and he added a lot of atmosphere to the game. And I thought, I mean, that's compelling. Just that part of it. And of course, he's built a whole business and YouTube presence and whatever out of it. So
yeah, and as a performer and someone who has an eye for setting up shots and for knowing how to tell the story of a game, he was. When Tabletop Tactics started, a lot of bat reps did not include dice rolls. But I think he intuitively knew that a lot of the dramatic tension of a Warhammer game, especially when you're watching it, is what happens with the dice. I think it's kind of interesting. We don't really think of it, but human beings love dice cubes. Like we love random number generators, and we get pretty invested in their outcomes. So it's not surprising to me that a game of Warhammer can actually be thrilling, because everything depends on a pretty dependable gambling device.
And when you think about
we're going to Vegas
dice
to play.
Dice games are pretty much the oldest games of chance you can think of. Like,
right? Yeah. So like it all makes sense. Anyway, for tabletop tactics, he's I talk about the third wave being professional. He's in that second wave, but came at it with that very professional mindset. Although, because he doesn't have the scale, our business models for content creators who do it professionally is largely subscriber driven. Is Patreon. Maybe you have your own independent website. Just ways of taking money from people who are interested in what you're doing. And when you're doing it that way, you don't actually have to scale crazy huge, right? If you think of it like how many people need to give you $10 a month before you're living okay and comfortably, and it might be thousands, or like 1,000 would be pretty great actually. So like it's an achievable thing. It's very, very difficult to do, but it's achievable. With this new wave, you have folks who have such a large audience that traditional advertisers will be interested in just advertising, and you can support it that way, which is not necessarily an option that we've had previous to this.
Yeah, that's good.
So it'll change some of the ways things are done, I think. It'll change the type of creators that will enter the space, because now there's different ways to monetize that aren't so dependent on establishing a sort of a rabid audience.
Yeah. So related to that, what do you think is the future of competitive content? Because that's a very different kind of content, and I feel like the audience is a little bit, or actually a lot narrower for the actual like top edge competitive content. I'm a fan of the Art of War guys. I watch their stuff all the time, but their audience is much smaller. So
right now,
yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll grow. I mean, I've been watching their stuff for a while. I hope they do grow. I think they're great. Mm-hmm. But what I'm wondering is, can we turn Warhammer into like StarCraft? Like, can we turn it into a game that people will watch competitively?
I had a really long chat with Jim Vessel last night on this topic. So if you want to hear me rant,
I'm stealing Jim's topic there.
No, it's okay. People can come listen to this cast.
Yeah, that's right. But if you just didn't get enough of me talking at you, you can go listen to that. But I think absolutely it's possible. I think for all the reasons that you guys just identified about what's good about Lawrence. So just the fact that he was able to find different angles and look in, and present the table to its strengths. Like a lot of competitive 40K and stream 40K is a lot of top down. When you're in top down, you lose basically everything that's special about Warhammer. Mm-hmm. So Warhammer is a 3-dimensional, tactile, detailed, gorgeous theater of the mind thing going on that, there's literally a Warhammer world. It's a museum. You go in and you look at dioramas. Every game of Warhammer is a diorama that, a little kid would be like, what is that? Right. So we need to find ways of shooting it better in real time. And I think there's lots of people out there doing a good job of figuring that out. Someday I hope I'm amongst them in finding a format that works and is compelling. But
just exploring that rightful ruler, which augmented reality type approach, I thought was very, very interesting and really sold me on that.
Yeah,
for sure.
And so that's one element, right? And I think so for me, if we're looking at it as a game right now, if you were to scroll by on a YouTube's your things to watch screen, and you saw like a top-down screen cap of a game of Warhammer, you wouldn't know what it was.
Top-down's boring.
Yeah, and even a side view, you don't really know what it was. If it was that side view with a bunch of hovering holograms over it, you might be like, "What is that? There's holograms. I'm in." It's sort of the way I view it. And then on top of that, it's useful in being able to bring the audience into what an experienced player intuitively sees. You intuitively understand the distance and relationship between models. You intuitively know that the guy on the bike over there is a captain. These are things that we take for granted that already play in our mind. You have to take that out of people's heads and somehow get it on screen efficiently. So that's what that can help do. But beyond that, if you look at what the really popular channels really are, is they're personality driven. So Yeah, and that goes for mini wargaming, tabletop tactics, even play on tabletop, which is really strong production, and like they took the bar and raised it again. They also have really engaging, cool guys on there. Like they're good personalities, people you want to watch and who can banter and are good. But mostly, like the strength of most of the really popular channels comes in their presenters, in the people that are playing the game, not necessarily how good they are at it or anything like that. So even Tabletop Titans, if you look, when we were doing the Nopen, in my head as I was preparing for it, I just assumed we were going to be commentating on a lot of top-down screens, because the last time I watched a lot of live 40K, that's what it was. When Titans came on, they kind of invented what I called like the medium side table shot. Yeah. So where they're both on the screen, and the camera's on the far side of the table on the long edge, looking across the table at them. In that shot, the game is not emphasized. The people playing the game are emphasized, right? And it's a terrible thing to try and commentate. So that was awkward. But what it did do was create a way to stream games in an engaging way for the audience, because then it becomes about them talking through what's happening. It becomes about interaction with the producer. They have a third person off screen who's running the stream, and interacting with the Twitch chat. So again, it's not about the game necessarily, although the game is important, obviously.
And from from a technical point of view, they just recently upgraded to 4K cameras, which allows them to actually zoom in on the action, because that's a big problem with the overhead. Is in 1080p, you'll see the table fine, but you can't zoom in and find detail on where the models are and the dice and all of that. And now that we have 4K, you can do that. You can just go, well, I'm going to zoom my 4K into this small segment of the table. It becomes 1080 or whatever, but it's visible.
Yes, that's a neat trick. I feel like a lot of the times I get vertigo from that. I need to see how well it works for them.
I've been watching them for a while, and I think it works well the way they do it.
Good. But I mean, they're incredibly savvy. Like they know what's up. And
their producer Bridger is really good at like pushing those buttons.
Yeah, like I mean, when I did the Ocho, which was just done on all balls. Was like, it'll work.
With that drone flying around LVO.
Yeah, it was literally like your dad does a stream, because it was all just like, are you sure about this? It'll work.
Do not sell yourself short. I think the big theme of what we've been talking about is just like this iterative building of like the culture around 40K, not only of attracting people outside of it, but also how competitive kind of 40K culture has been built. Part of that is FLG kind of stoically maintaining this huge FAQ in 7th edition, so people remain interested in playing the game, right? Because you want to go to a competitive game, you want to know what the rule set is, and at that time there really wasn't not necessarily a really workable rule set. They kind of plugged that gap. You're moving into 8th edition, there's more appeal to playing this competitive game. So then is there an appeal to how you present it? And I think the Ocho and Stat Center plays a big role in all that, right? Because the Ocho was like, okay, we watch sports. There's commentators on sports, right? Yeah. Why not commentators on 40K? And I, of course, did not make the Final 8 last LVO. I know it might be a shock to some of our viewers, but I still went and hung out with buddies in the hotel room, and we watched you guys. And it was just like, dude, we didn't go anywhere. We're like, it's comfortable, ordered food up there. We spent the whole day watching.
Sad, actually.
It's not sad. I like that.
Nothing casual about 40K.
In Vegas, and after 2 days of Warhammer, what did you do? You ordered food?
Well, you're tired, by the way, after all the meals out and the partying, the gambling, and the Warhammer. Yeah, so you're in that hotel room. You're watching the Final 8 play.
The partying and the gambling, yeah.
So I work on Bay Street. So for American listeners out there, that's the podunk Canadian version of Wall Street, I guess.
Yeah.
So people who like to go to Las Vegas for the weekend are a lot of my coworkers, and so gives me such perverse pleasure to be like them to be like, hey Ben, what you up to this weekend? I'm like, I was just going to Vegas. Oh, what, Vegas, eh, bud? Oh, yeah, bud. Okay, all right. What stays in Vegas? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, eh, bud? I'm like, that's right. I'm going to do the most innocent thing that ever happens in Vegas.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
Fly a drone in the casino.
Lovely. It's wonderful. I'm going to play a dice game for 3 days, and I'm not going to win or lose any money. It's going to be great. So, yeah, it's great.
No, but the point I was making there, don't sell yourself short on that the Ocho. I think it was kind of a major milestone. It's like you have the premier competitive 40K event, at least in North America, that's like closes out the season. Who's going to be the big winners? What are going to be the upsets? All that drama around it. And you guys are there commentating the games. You're like, Brad Chester made the big move against Siegler and then didn't do as many wounds with his Centurions as he thought he did, and that's all accentuated by you guys commenting on it. Because if it's just this camera and you're listening to the players, sometimes you don't know what's going on.
Well, we weren't the first to do commentary. I think if there was something I thought that if there was something I thought that we were doing that was unique and it was something I really wanted to do, it was the fact that we moved around tables. So like we didn't have a fixed game table, and that's I think a key to how I view things needing to be is that you need to be able to move around because if you're just tied to one table, it can suck. And
to be honest, there's definitely some slow moments in a game of Warhammer.
Yeah, and you want to be able to mix it up. And but I mean, another point I like to make too is that American football, the NFL, is 3 hours of television time, and the ball's in motion for 12 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. If you've ever played football, you're sitting down more than you're running. Yeah,
right.
That's for sure.
So like, some crazy shit happens in those 12 minutes, but like, there's a lot of tap dancing you're doing, waiting for it to happen, right? And so there's no reason why. Like, there's a lot of stuff. Like a lot of the reasons why I am the quote creative director.
So that's why we need people like us who can talk till they say something.
That's right. But like for me, it's such a wonderful, but no, it's an awesome challenge to find a way to make what is to me, and if I'm playing it, incredibly entertaining, incredibly vivid, a very vivid experience. A game of Warhammer. There isn't a boring moment in a game of Warhammer. So why is it impossible for it to not be boring for someone who's watching it? And it's just that a lot of what makes it so amazing is in our imaginations. You got to find ways to bring that out.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right. Well, I had penciled in a short chat about Drukhari, but I think we'll save that one for the next show since we've been talking for a while already. And frankly, I think talking about Drukhari would cheapen the great conversation we've had so far.
Maybe it would enrich it even. Maybe, who knows?
Well, we'll wait for the fact.
I know I would.
Then we'll do a show on that.
I would cheapen the conversation about Drukhari.
I have no idea about Drukhari either. I opened the book and I was like, oh, elves, and closed the book. Yeah.
Well, I bought a Drukhari army from Darren, but I haven't played it yet.
I have a question for the floor because you guys are both CanHammer team tournament folks, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like, so Frontline Gaming is they've got their Las Vegas team tournament in September, and they're figuring out their format. And the idea was thrown out to have the team format be you can only use each source once in your team of 5.
Yeah.
And then, but on top of that you restrict each team must bring one of each of sort of a rejig super factions. So one Chaos player, one Imperium player, one Eldari player, and one Xenos player.
Okay.
And then you can double up on one of them.
Eldari. I like it. I think most teams probably already split that way, so I don't know if it's like that big of a hurdle. But the thing I like best about team tournaments is the diversity of armies you play. Because God knows I've been to tournaments where I've played like 4 Space Marines out of 5 games, and I'm playing Space Marines. And so I'm part of the problem, obviously. But and that gets boring, right? So what's great about team tournaments is you get to see a diversity of armies. Do you actually need to enforce that rule? I'm not sure, but I think if you do, it's not a bad thing. I think it's great that you're forcing people to bring diverse armies.
Cool.
I like it. I mean, I feel like I'd have to, reconfigure the team a little bit, but would make it work. I mean, most people have an Imperium army. There's us chaos weirdos that have enough chaos to supply 3 or 4 armies. And then
the Eldari is the one that you may. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of pointy-ear players.
Yeah, there's a lot of Eldari. Like I've been playing Eldar since '87.
Yeah, so that means that one of your players has to be Tyranid, Tau, Orc, or Necrons. Am I forgetting one?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah,
there's those guys out there.
There's enough. There's enough.
I do it. I mean, our team have already been talking about actually the LVO team tournament. If it wasn't for COVID and Canada kind of lagging behind being able to vaccinate people,
I'm optimistic.
We'd be more serious. I feel like September.
I have my shot already, so of course.
Yeah, I feel like September for an international kind of organizing a team to go to, or not. organizing a team from Canada to Vegas. I mean, if September is a little quick, but definitely was something we put in our calendar
On the
for
radar.
20 radar for
I'd be
2022.
interested to go. I'd be interested to go. My issue is because I'm a university professor. September is kind of a bad time for me.
Sure, yeah.
That's
but
why
I
you
could
have TAs.
probably make it work.
Yeah, that's why you have TAs. Come on.
This next sprint in general, so like talking about Stat Center, again, like one of the hard grinds of it is that we picked a pretty broad qualification to get covered on the show, and that was part of its charm. Like, so you got to hear from everybody who won a GT or won a major, and in a lot of cases someone who top tabled, and so that was cool. And I thought I think it's like a really nice thing for the community, because I could, like, people were genuinely like waiting for the call, like, you know, when a tournament, like, I got to be on Stats there. Like, that to me was one of my goals. I thought it was the coolest thing, but it probably would kill me. Like, I would die if I had to do that for a very, very long period of time. And also, I think it was starting to get grinding and repetitive. Maybe it's just because I was the one doing it, but at any rate, I think narrowing the scope of events for coverage, I think, is kind of key. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that we're about to enter, I think, a very different competitive landscape, in the sense that there are going to be some big events happening frequently.
Talk about pent up demand after a year of COVID.
Yeah, but like so we know Frontline Gaming is expanding their lineup. I think just that move alone, I think, more than doubles the amount of events. Certainly over 200 it's like at least double the amount of events over that level. Yeah. There were a lot of 100-person events in 2019, but and right around 100. But Zach Becker in the UK of LGT fame, he's really widening the amount of sort of ambitious large scale events that he would like to run, and he's setting them up. And there's all these regional circuits popping up that will be able to drive big numbers. And then there's the, you know, mystery behind the Games Workshop curtain, that is, you know, Mike Brandt. Mm-hmm. And what does what Games Workshop events look like going forward? Because, you know, we've seen job postings, and we assume that they've been filled, and that, you know, it appears like they might do something on the event stage. So if that happens, what does that look like? Yeah. So, like, it'll be really, like, maybe not a little bit 2021 probably, because, you know, we'll be a little on the back foot still, but 2022 is going to be just nuts. I think it's going to be really fun to participate in this game.
Well, part of what we've been talking about, this whole like culture developing and like new style of content creation, just like Stat Center was kind of blows your mind, and like how it's approaching 40K, competitive 40K. I think part of what people are going to have to discover is not only what's new and compelling, but also sustainable. Yeah. Because as much, like you said, as much as I love Stat Center, and I'm sure everybody else loves Stat Center, it can, at least from my perspective, felt like that's got to be a lot of work, because you have to track down people, blah, blah, blah. Like, just like 40K today, that was a great cast. I liked listening to it every day. I couldn't imagine how those, like Steve mentioned it last time, but just the amount of work that goes into it. Like, at some point, the juice has to be worth the squeeze, in a sense, right? Yeah. So I think part of this development will be content creators trying to find that balance between, you know, input and output. Yeah, for sure. And I think, I guess, on that audience scale thing is that I was alluding to before, is I guess there is opportunity maybe in the future that, you know, you could do it as a full-time job without having to have a Patreon, right? And, or, you know, without, you know, needing to depend on like a very small subscriber base. So it's super interesting. And when we're talking about like, where does it all go? It feels like it's going to go at least to that next notch, you know, where there's even more very, very large scale events. Will probably, as a result, have to get more serious about, you know, I've been banging the drum about, you know, some form of sanctioning of events to, you know, develop some basic standards. You know, yes, it's nice to say something like the social contract or be a gentleman, but that's nonsense to me, because it, you know, what rules do you intend by that, sir? You know,
it works like 90% of the time, but that 10% of the time where it doesn't,
it's kind of important.
That, like, it's kind of important. Yeah.
Also, we're human beings, and human beings, you know, will do shady shit. You know, so like we know this. Like, there's nothing special or unique about Warhammer players. You know, like, and the stakes. Like, people are, again, like, oh man, it's just these are toy soldiers. How could someone cheat at toy soldiers? Like, dude, like people cheat at rock, paper, scissors. Like, give me a break. Like, people are gonna try and do stuff. So like, we just need to do even the most basic, take some of the most basic steps to ensure fair play, to protect players out there, and make sure we protect this really cool community we got, and don't make it so it turns into a lot of people paranoid about stuff that really happens still infrequently, despite the fact that, you know, it's a meme. So
They get mediatized when they do happen, but it is in fact very infrequent.
yeah, I would like to think so.
All right,
Yeah.
well, that was a great chat. Thank you for joining us, Val. Really enjoyed our conversation tonight. Nick,
Thank you.
Thank you as usual.
Thank you.
CanHammer fans, we'll catch you next time. Have a good night.
Good night.